Hi, Phil. Thanks for inviting me. Can you see my slide okay?
We can,
Hear me all right?
yes.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. So I'll start. So I'm Helen Todd. I'm the learning technologist with the online distance learning team at the University of Sussex. And today I'm going to give an overview of why and how we use universal design for learning in the delivery of our courses. Okay, so I start with giving a brief explanation of Universal Design for Learning, or UDL for short. I'll then talk about how our online distance learning courses run at Sussex and who our students are, importantly. And then I'm going to put the two together. So in a practical sense, how do we embed UDL in our teaching programme? And that part's going to be divided into the three principles of UDL, which are engagement, representation, and action and expression. Okay, so now I'm going to describe briefly what Universal Design for Learning is. Now this concept stemmed from architecture, actually. So it was, first of all, universal design. And that term was coined by Ron Mace, an architect, lecturer, and wheelchair user who promoted accessible building design. You can see an example of that in the picture. So we have an entrance to a building, and on the right there are steps, and on the left there's a wheelchair ramp. So two ways into the same environment. And personally, I have to admit that as I'm not a wheelchair user, accessible entrances, I didn't really pay attention to them. But then around 20 years ago, I had a child. Suddenly I had a pushchair that I had to take everywhere. And I found these ramps and lifts really, really useful. So from that example, you can see that universal design means that two groups, carers of small children in a pushchair, can benefit from a feature which we generally associate with another group, wheelchair users. And this is key, I think, to universal design and universal design for learning. But here, with bricks and mortars building, this extra access route leads to a removal of barriers, and a wider range of users than we might think can now access it freely. And that's the universal part of universal design. Another thing is, without that ramp, wheelchair users would have to seek out the support themselves. They would have to wait or call out for assistance. Universal design means that the responsibility is now on the architect to design a building that everyone can access without seeking out help. And that's the design part. And universal design for learning uses those same principles to create learning environments that are accessible to as many people as possible. But it's not just about accessibility. It's also about learning materials that are inclusive, equitable, and challenging for all learners too. And also, the bottom line is that although through UDL, students can understand how they learn best and then make good choices to support that. So we're encouraging learners to develop their agency and autonomy. Okay, now I'm going to talk about our online programme at Sussex. So we have a portfolio of vocational postgraduate courses that are 100% online. There's 9 different subjects, which include sustainable development, media ethics and social change, quantum technology, that's just a few of them. And these are all divided into 12 7-week modules. And there's flexibility when students can start, or when they can start, take breaks as well in between modules too. You can see there's a map there. Each of those blue pointers across the world map indicates a country in which we have a Sussex student studying online. So that's across 153 countries at the moment. And so the average student is around 38. And the majority are female, although it's really hard to talk about an average student. It's really diverse. As you can see from the map, we have so many different time zones we're covering. The age there, the range can be from 22 to above. So adult learners have a lot of life experiences. They may have been away from academia for a long time, as around 2/3 are based outside the UK. They have diverse backgrounds, cultures, a lot of non-native English speakers as well. And they've all chosen to study online. As mature students, they have to fit study around other commitments, family and full-time work, so they have the flexibility. We also know from Disabled Students UK that many disabled students found online learning more accessible than in person. So a lot of different groups of people benefit from the flexibility of our online programme. Also, it means that the diversity of this cohort, it means we really do need to use universal design for learning. It's crucial to help people who speak English as a foreign language, people who are unfamiliar with current UK academic convention, people who have unreliable Wi-Fi because they really depends on where they are. We've got people in conflict zones, for example, who are studying with us. And also people who just have big commitments outside of study, so they have to fit it around there. Okay, so now putting it into practice. So Universal Design for Learning is a big framework, and it's created by a CAST organisation. It's all up on their website, freely available. They've divided their framework into 3 different principles. We have on the left engagement, the why of learning. So that's about maintaining motivation and enthusiasm for learning despite distractions. Representation, that's the what of learning. That's the different ways that we make meaning from information. So it's different for all of us, the way we comprehend. And finally, action and expression. That's the how of learning, the different ways that we approach and navigate the learning environment. On the framework, on the CAST website, each principle has 3 guidelines, and each guideline branches out into 4 or 5 practical considerations of how to enact each guideline. It's a living document, so there was a recent update in the summer, UDL 3.0, which emphasises, among other things, learner identity, the role of joy and play, and challenging exclusive practice. The amount of information that you'll find on that framework of guidelines, it can be a bit overwhelming, so I'm going to explain how we incorporate these 3 principles in our online environment with an example for each guideline. All right, so first one I'm going to talk about is engagement. This means providing multiple engaging options. So key thing is multiple, like there are different ways to access the building, there's different options here because we're all different, that spark interest, maintain motivation and enthusiasm for the material. Because if we want students to engage with the material, we really need to engage with their emotions and minimize distractions. Okay, so on the left, we have welcoming interests and identities. That means how can we make it interesting to people? So essentially, looking at our subjects, how can we make sense of these complex topics? So, for example, we have a Sustainable Development Master's Programme. One of the modules in there is called Globalisation and the Environment. It deals with environmental politics, potentially complex, but also kind of anxiety-inducing for many people as well, potentially depressing. But we've dealt with it in a really creative way. So the academic and the designer of the module worked hard to make it engaging by incorporating storytelling, role play. Students work as teams to complete missions and quests, and they compete on a leaderboard. So it's really gamified and really imaginative and optimistic in the end. Okay, in the middle we have sustaining effort and persistence. How we help learners to tackle challenges and stop them getting frustrated. So learners are engaged by activities that are meaningful to them and reflect their interests and goals. So, for example, assessments, they have to really reflect the learners' lives. So we ask them to create official style documents such as marketing reports, policy briefs, things that they can apply in their jobs, in their real lives. They don't want to waste time on topics and tasks that aren't important to them. Okay, so on the right there, we have emotional capacity. That's really important. We use the power of emotions in learning, so we need to engage those. And we need students to have a sense of belonging and community to feel connected with what they learn. So we have spaces, discussion boards, Padlet boards, which are student-led. So students can be themselves, and they allow for asynchronous interaction, so it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. And it also fulfills a consideration to create space for learners to take pride in their accomplishments, their communities, and their identities. Students really love learning from each other about where their colleagues or their other students are learning from, really keen to learn about the other kind of environments where people are studying. What's also important here is having a guideline to support this online interaction. We share best practice and we set expectations. We can't assume that students will know how to work on a project online totally with another group who are then sort of geographically spread out. This recognises potential pitfalls, but also supports learners to self-regulate, to support them in making decisions and develop their own agency. Okay, whoops, sorry, the middle one now, representation. This is about making sure we show information in multiple ways to reflect the needs of diverse learners, those with sensory disabilities, learning disabilities, non-native English speakers, and so on. And also people learn best when they see themselves represented in the content. So on the left there, perception. This is about flexible content, showing different perspectives. Again, on assessments, we make sure that the information is available in multiple means and can be accessed in multiple ways. So written briefs, tutor videos explaining what the students have to do. There are also discussion boards, especially or dedicated for students to ask their tutors questions about the assessments, as well as live Q&As. In the middle, we have building knowledge. So this is about helping the learners to construct meaning from the material, so helping them learn about how they learn, giving students the opportunities to reflect and make links. That's as part of the course design. So information is really easier to understand if it is linked to prior knowledge. These activities, the quizzes, the checklists, guide learners to employ strategies to sort of testing themselves, which is going to help them to retain what they learn. And then language and symbols. This is all about creating a shared understanding, make sure that there are no barriers in terms of language. And there's other ways, the ways we achieve this. We use the assistive technology that Canvas allows us, and our interactive lectures include. So if there's a graph or an illustration, there'll be a long description, which really helps with clarity for all students. We include podcasts, information in audio format, which means that you don't have to be sat at a desk to access the materials. And as I said, interactive lectures incorporate multiple representations of the knowledge. There are illustrations, charts, tables, slideshows. All of these make complex ideas much clearer to understand. All right, and the last principle is action and expression. This is about designing an environment that allows multiple ways to navigate it, complete tasks and demonstrate knowledge, as there is no one way that we can do these things that is best for everyone. On the left, we have expression and communication. So we need learners to share, make it easy as possible for learners to share what they know and share their ideas. So they have options on how they can participate with their preferred tools, discussion boards and Padlets. On there, students can use text, images, video or audio posts, whichever they prefer. And they can create their own Zoom groups or WhatsApp groups, and also meet together on the Canvas LMS. They have group spaces there too. In the middle, strategy development. This is because we want to help students get the most out of their learning. And so we have an online study support site and study skills support, which is dedicated to our online students. So they have their own, we have our own online distance librarian who gives, with her team, she gives live sessions, but there's also a lot of self-access resources. Students can also email the inbox and study skills tutors directly for support with this too. Finally on here,
I'm so sorry, we're going to have to wrap this up quickly because we've run over time by about 5 minutes.
Okay. But the final thing is that there are multiple ways, for example, tab navigation and keyboards to navigate our VLE. So final slide, we use it because it reduces barriers for as many students as possible. That's UDL. It helps learners develop their agency and become better learners themselves. The learning materials are more authentic and meaningful, so engages students. And if students are engaged and enjoying it, then it benefits the teachers as well. That's the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm afraid we have run over on time, so we don't have time to kind of ask any of the questions now, but there are lots of questions in the Q&A. If you have, this is for the attendees, if you have asked Helen a question in the chat, if you'd be kind enough to stick it in the Q&A, it will make it much easier to find. So if you could pop it in there, hopefully Helen can have a look at that at some point throughout the rest of the webinar.